Speaker, thank you very much indeed for calling me in what I think is a most important debate for the well-being of the British economy, and I would like to sincerely thank the Backbench Business Committee for allowing time on the floor of the House today for us to address this issue, and I'd like to pay particular tribute to my honourable friend, the lady from Witham, for helping to secure this debate today. It is perhaps a little surprise that I take a great interest in this subject area, representing the constituency which contains Gatwick Airport, of course the world's busiest one-runway, two-terminal airport, and my constituency is also the base to a number of aviation-related companies as well. We have tour operators, globally renowned company like TUI Travel. Of course, we have British Airways operating from Gatwick Airport. We have the headquarters of Virgin Atlantic Airways, a very iconic British company that is innovative in the services that it provides. And we have EasyJet, now this country's largest airline, with around about 40% of their flights, 1,078 flights every week from EasyJet going out of Gatwick Airport. And I'm delighted to say that from next spring they're starting a route to Moscow as well. So it's perhaps a little surprise that aviation and the many people who are employed locally of my constituents who work in the industry are deeply concerned. A mention was made earlier on about the number of emails received by honourable and right honourable members from the Fair Tax on Flying campaign, and I think I received over 1,000 of those emails. But it's not for parochial reasons that I am speaking in this debate today, and I am raising again in this place my concerns at the level of air passenger duty that we charge. Almost exactly a year ago, I was very fortunate to be granted an adjournment debate, warning that if APD were to be increased, as was suggested, then actually we would be doing some very real damage to the economic prospects of this country. And I quite understand why the Treasury is looking to bring in revenue. We are all acutely aware that the national finances, the deficit that we sustain in this country, is deeply troubling. And while I congratulate very warmly the government on reducing the deficit by a quarter in just 2.5 years' time, it is little wonder that with almost £3 billion coming into the Treasury from air passenger duty receipts, that the Treasury doesn't view with alacrity the prospect of giving up that sort of income. Of course, I'd be delighted to speak.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Is it also not the case that it may well be that even though the Exchequer may be raising £2 to £3 billion from this taxation, the air passenger duty, they may also be losing, on the other hand, an equivalent amount of money, if not more, from a loss in trade and improved economics? And isn't that exactly the reason why we should be looking at having a full review of the economic impact in this case?
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend from Windsor for that point, because he anticipates exactly what I was coming on to say, and that is, just as they concluded in the Netherlands, where they used to have air passenger duty, and they scrapped that because they worked out, after the studies that they had done by the Dutch government, that actually it was costing the Dutch economy more than it was bringing into the Dutch Treasury in terms of aviation. And I think that's why we see only 6 European countries charging any form of air passenger duty at all, and all of those countries in Europe charging a very modest amount of air passenger duty. Indeed, I will.
I'm most grateful he's making a very articulate case on behalf of not only Gatwick but also the change that we all would seek to see. Does he agree with me, however, that it is not just a London tax, but it is also, if this government is interested in supporting the regions of England at the very least, then it would be something that change to this would make a huge difference to regions like the North East and the North West?
Well, my honourable friend is quite right. This is a bad tax for the UK as a whole. Whatever nation or region of the UK honourable or right honourable members happen to represent, of course I'll give way to. But I want to come on to say that I think it would be a mistake, as has been alluded to some of the other contributions made today, for us to move to some sort of regional banding within the United Kingdom for air passenger duty. I think the solution is for us to, over time, reduce air passenger duty altogether or down to a very modest level. And I think it would be a mistake to pit one part of the United Kingdom against another on this issue, because truly, in this respect, as a global trading nation whose success as a relatively small country in the world coming to have dominance globally has been because we are a trading nation, and we either stand together on that or we fall apart when it comes to trade. And I think we need to view this argument holistically as very much a British issue. I want to, in the remaining time that I have, Mr Deputy Speaker, just turn to some of the misnomers about air passenger duty that are sometimes put around. The first of those is that this is an environmental tax. It's not an environmental tax. If it were an environmental tax, I would support it, because I think it is important that we reduce our emissions wherever possible. This is purely a revenue-raising tax, albeit a false economy and misguided one, because I think it costs our economy far more. We have a double taxation when it comes to air duty in this country, because, of course, at the beginning of this year, we saw the introduction of the European emissions trading scheme. That is an environmental tax, and I have no complaint with that. But air passenger duty is almost certainly not. The other argument that I would hope to debunk this afternoon is that because aviation fuel and because air tickets are not subject to value-added tax, that somehow we need APD to replace that. Now, it is impossible under the conditions of the Chicago Convention to charge VAT on aviation fuel and on air tickets. But if it were possible, APD still would represent a far higher amount than if VAT were chargeable. So we are already far overtaxed. But I want to come back in the little time I have left, Mr Deputy Speaker, to actually what this motion in front of the House says today. Because a year ago, I was asking the government in my adjournment debate not to increase air passenger duty. I'm sorry I failed in that, and air passenger duty went up. But today, we are not calling for a cut in APD. We are simply calling for APD to be frozen at its current level until the Treasury can carry out an assessment of whether air passenger duty is actually costing our economy, as I contend it does, than it actually brings in to the Exchequer. Now, the Treasury conducts surveys and studies all the time, and it's absolutely right that they should do so. And I think it is perfectly reasonable to ask the Exchequer to be able to carry out that study so that we can have some proper facts and figures to be able to make an informed decision. The stakes are too high. We are a trading nation with competitors who are eager to gain our business. If we don't carry out the assessment to appreciate the impact that APD is possibly having on our economy, then we will simply be losing out to our competitors. Competitors, as has been mentioned earlier on, not just in continental Europe, but around the world. And therefore, I very much hope the government will respond positively to this very reasonable motion that is down today, carry out a study, carry out an assessment, and until that can report, please, let's not increase air passenger duty anymore and harm the British economy.
Yeah.